So git clone this guy, cd win president, git checkout, whatever this is. And here's that detached head state thing, which just means you're not in a branch right now, so you can't add any new commits. So what I want to do is I want to go from here to a new branch. So that's going to be this Twitter starter thing. So it's like I'm going back in time and then I'm creating a new sort of divergence off my life as if things were to have gone a different way.
Huh.
So I'm going back to an earlier time and then going off in a different direction.
So what is it?
It's each commit has its own unique ID. So these are all the commits in here. Each one has its own unique ID.
So it goes to that commit.
Yep.
A
Exactly.
snapshot of the state.
Yep. Each one's a little snapshot. Okay, cool. Any questions or anything about getting set up with Twitter or what else? All right, I'm going to go barreling forward. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here doesn't really have like a cool end result. It's just sort of getting set up. The goal for this first part is just going to be to not have any errors in Express. And I'll talk about these different things that we're setting up as we go. So where we come into this app, it's where you left off yesterday, I think, where you can like create a new candidate and do all that stuff, but you have to do it manually. And there's no Angular, there's no front-end JavaScript on here yet. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install something called Express Session. And so just to remind you again, this is the usual format where if you start falling behind or whatever, just tilt your screen down and then just take notes, ask questions, and it'll give you time to work on it in a bit. So the first thing I'm going to do, I see I need to require Express Session here. So that means I need, if I don't already have it in my node modules folder, I need to install it. So I'm going to npm install save Express Session. And then I'll stop there just to ask, what is a session? Where have we seen sessions before? Brendan?
Users and Rails.
Yeah, what did it do? Do you remember?
Well, let's see. So it's not a cookie. It's a server-side sort of variable that keeps track of when a user's logged in.
Yeah.
Or logged out.
Did it save to the database? Do you remember seeing a sessions table or making a sessions model?
It's either on or off. The session is initiated and then ended,
Yeah.
basically. So it's just a variable that exists for a while.
Mm-hmm. Hence why it's called a session variable. It just exists for a while. Mohammed?
I was going to say it's saved on the user.
It's a cookie.
Well, it depends a little bit. So in Rails, everything is actually saved in your cookies. Here in Express, everything is actually going to be saved in the database. So Express actually saves sessions in the database, as we're going to see in a bit. But can someone just say in English for me, why is it called a session variable? What is a session, just in plain English? Adrian?
I mean, it's like a set amount of time that you're doing, that you're like engaged in something. Like it's not a permanent thing. So the variable comes out and goes to that session.
Yeah, so if there are 5 users all using my site, are they all going to have the same session variable?
No.
If there are 5 users, how many different sessions will there be? Exactly. Yep, that's exactly right. So a session is just like an instance of someone using your app. And it's called a session variable because it's unique to that instance of someone using your app. Okay, so let's see. The next thing I'm going to do on here is I can see there's this thing called connect Mongo that needs to be required, so I'm going to install that as well. This connect Mongo thing, this is what makes it possible for a session variable to be saved to your database. So this is the thing that we're going to be using that says, hey, when I want to set a session variable that's like is logged in or something, into my database is going to go a new field that says is logged in. So every session variable we create is going to be saved into the database. This is different from how it was in Rails. Rails does not save things to the database, but here we are saving things to the database. So you can already see that there are several different ways to save sessions. This is just one of them. This is the Express way. Okay, and now comes some boilerplate. So let's see. I'm going to include those two things that I required. I'm going to put this express session one in this session variable. And then I'm going to put connect Mongo in the cmongo variable. And then here I'm going to do smongo for session mongo. This. So this is another one of those things where like this doesn't really follow any particular logic. This is just how you set up the thing. This is just how you get it started. Adrian?
When you ran NodeMon,
Mm-hmm.
it says that it can't find module parse whatever.
Oh, yeah, you know what I forgot to do? I'll bet if I type nodemon right now, I'm going to get the exact same thing. Well, yeah, I start off with cannot find module express. What do I need to do? npm install. Yep. Thanks for reminding me of that. Whenever you clone down an Express app, the first thing you're going to do is npm install. Just like when you clone down a Ruby or Rails app, the first thing you're going to do is bundle install. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so now I should have all of this stuff happily in my node modules folder. And now if I type nodemon, I think, oh, well, I got this error. Anyone know what this one, what do I do for this? Nyron? Mongod, yep, gotta run Mongod. Now I'll restart nodemon. Now hopefully I am error-free. And I'm error-free. Okay, so far so good. The next thing is going to be the last bit of boilerplate to get this session stuff set up. So what I've done so far is I've pulled in this package for managing sessions. I've pulled in this package that lets me connect sessions to Mongo. Now I need to actually connect sessions to Mongo. So I have all the puzzle pieces. Now I need to put them together. So this is going to be some more boilerplate where I do use session. I'm not even going to say this out loud because I don't know what most of this stuff does. It's just how you get this thing set up. I am going to talk about this secret in a second, though. I like turtles. Store, new, mongo, mongoose connection, mongoose.connection. Okay, so these guys in here, this resave, save uninitialized, and store, I'm not entirely sure what those do. I just know that they're recommended for doing this sort of thing. So this is just more boilerplate. And you shouldn't really need to worry about those as soon as they're set up. But the interesting thing that I do want to talk about is this secret up there. Anyone just want to take a shot in the dark about what this secret is doing? Mohammed?
It disguises your API, your key.
And how does it do that?
Through one of these things you just installed.
Yeah, but when you say disguise it, what do you mean?
It means encryption.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so when we talk about encrypting things on a computer, usually the process is something like this. This is just tangential to what we're actually doing in here, but it's just to talk a bit more about how encryption actually works. So if I have a number like, let's say I have the number 3, and I want to encrypt the number 3. What I could do is I could do something like 3 to the 12th, something like that. So 3 to the 12th, if I just take a little bit of time, I can probably figure that out. 3 times 3 times 3. I'm actually kind of curious as to what that is. Any savants in here know off the top of their heads? 3 to the 12th. 531441. So it's 531441. If I just send this number to someone, they have no idea what they're looking at. They can't really do anything with this. If they know that it's my mysterious code to the 12th, then maybe they could start figuring it out. But taking something to the 12th root, that's some pretty complicated math. So that's still really hard. So if I want to send my number 3 to someone, this is a good way of doing it to make sure that no one can unencrypt. So you might be wondering, like, why is this useful, being able to encrypt something but you can't decrypt it? So when you save your password in a database, they are not just putting your password in a database. Like, they're not just putting, Jenny87 in the database. They're not saving it as plain text. Instead, what they're doing is they're basically turning this into a number and then running it through some really complicated calculation. Something where it's easy enough to do one direction, but it's really hard to do the other direction. I can do 3 to the 12th if I just multiply 3 together a bunch of times. That won't take me too long. But trying to do it the other direction, trying to get the 12th root of something, that's really complicated. So same thing with this. They encrypt it into something crazy, 8675309 or something. And it's really easy for them to turn this into that, but it's virtually impossible to turn this back into that. So what they save in the database isn't this. They don't actually save Jenny87 in the database. Instead, they save this thing. So any company should never know what your password is. If you ever get an email from a company saying, you just signed up and your password is Jenny87, whatever it was you typed in, they are committing a big security no-no. No one at that company should have any idea what your password is. Instead, whenever you sign in, you type something in, they run it through that same calculation, and they check whether or not it matches this guy. So they take whatever you typed in, they run it through the same calculation, and they see whether it matches. That way, they can still authenticate you. They can still tell whether you are who you say you are, but they have no idea what your actual password is. The only place that password is stored is in your memory, or if you write everything down in all the obvious places, like I do. But they don't have any access to your password, and they probably can't figure it out, which is a really good thing.
I was going to mention extra little tidbit of information. An extra step that some encryption things do is something called salting.
Yeah, and that's part of what we're doing here, actually. So imagine, so we have Jenny87. What if I put an extra bit of text on the end of it? Like, what if I added turtle onto the end of every password that came in, and then I ran it through that calculation? That adds a bunch more complexity to that, and it makes it much more difficult for people to somehow reverse engineer, to somehow decrypt. So when you hear about people salting their hashes, a hash, that is the random string, or what looks random, that comes from running through this equation. So this would be a hash. Not a very good one, because it's really simple. But a salt would be something like turtle in this case. It's an extra string or a couple of numbers added onto the end of something that increase the complexity of it. And so the secret right here, a secret is a bit different from a salt in that it's something, it like goes into the calculation by which you're encrypting this thing in the first place. So if I wanted to, I could do something like, instead of my calculation just being to the 12th, I could have it be like to the 12th plus 3 or something. And then that would be part of the secret. It's a little thing added on to that calculation. So that's like Web Security 101 in like 10 minutes. And so that's what this secret is doing here. This is just making your session ID even more complicated and hard to reverse engineer. I know we got some security wonks in here. Yeah, right?
Wait, that is doing that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How is that?
So whenever it's just factored into whatever hashing mechanism they're using to encrypt this thing or to hash this thing.
So that's the unencrypted secret right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep people from looking at it in your GitHub?
Great question. We'll get to that. And environment variables. Yes, right?
What's SMongo?
SMongo is this thing. So I still don't really know what it does. It's how you tell this connect Mongo thing that you're using express session here. So this step has the most boilerplate stuff, where it's just sort of stuff that you put on there and you don't really worry about. This step has the most magic in it, where it's just getting things set up. Kyra?
I'm just curious because when I did my terminal, I got a error that talked about a connect session store, but when I just Googled it, it said it was specifically for that requirement, and I don't have that on there. So how does that connect to, is that with the session or?
Hold that thought. If you get an error, then we'll troubleshoot it when we go into the catching up part, and I'll come look at it then. Okay, so that's the first part of setting up, was just adding in that session thing. The second part is putting in environment variables. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new file called env.json, env.json. And you'll notice that this thing right here, it talks about sample.env.json. We're doing the same thing. I'm just calling it env.json. Then in here, I'm going to put session secret. And whatever I had in here, I think it was I like turtles. I like turtles. Okay, and then I'm going to say, I'm going to load that file, that env.json. So I've just loaded all of that into this object right here. If I do console.log env, I should see session secret, I like turtles, right there. And now what I can do is I can put env session secret right here. And then the very last thing is I'm going to put env.json in there. So what I just did was I created a file that is not going to be pushed up to GitHub. That's because I just put it in my git ignore. So it's not going to go up to GitHub. And what I can do is I can use this as a place for putting any of those like secret codes or whatever that I'm going to be using in my app. I can put them in here. Because it's not going to be pushed up to GitHub, no one else is going to see them unless they use my computer. So these are called environment variables because they're specific to my environment. My environment is me using this particular MacBook Pro right now. These variables only exist in this environment. That m.json isn't going to go up to GitHub, so it only exists in my environment.
What about when you deploy?
When I deploy, we're going to do it a slightly different way. But for right now, this is getting us in that direction. Jeff, you look concerned.
You hit the secret code on the env.json file, but it is still in index.js. That file is going to get pushed up, right?
Well, I like turtles is not.
I'm sorry, I missed it when you changed that.
Yep. So up here, I require that env file, and then down here, I take that session secret that I put in that env file and put it in here. You're not going to see I like turtles anywhere in my code, and you're not going to see it on GitHub. Not because I don't like turtles, but because that's my secret password, and I don't want people to see it.
This is basically the same way Figaro works in Rails.
Yep.
So I discovered.
Yep, exactly. Okay, and then I can take this one step further, and I'm going to do process.env.sessionSecret equals env.sessionSecret. So what this is all about, process.env, this process thing, it's like a global variable in an Express app. You've seen it before with like process.exit. That closes an app. I think those are probably the only two things we've seen so far, is process.exit and process.env. But because it's a global variable, you can attach things onto it that are now available everywhere in your app. So I just took this environment variable from here and I added it onto this process.env thing. Now I have access to it everywhere in my app down the road. Cool. So the very last step is going to be taking that stuff that I got from Twitter. Did I close that page? Damn, I did. Whatever. I'll just use the stuff from in here. So it's going to be taking the stuff from Twitter and also putting that in my environment variables. So at the end, you're going to have a session secret, T callback URL, that T stands for Twitter. And that's going to be that HTTP 127.0.0.1/login/Twitter/callback. T consumer key this guy that I copied from Twitter, from that keys and secrets page, and then this consumer secret thing. All right, so I put all those guys in my env.json, and then to end, I'm going to attach each of those to this process. So I'm going to do process.env, callback URL equals env t callback URL. I'm going to do the same thing for consumer key. And the same thing for consumer secret. There we go. Okay, and now I'm at the stopping place, so hopefully I'm not getting any errors, and I'm not, so that means I'm good so far until I start getting errors in the future. So before I release you guys to take a bit to put this together, any questions? Yeah, John. I'm not sure, actually. Okay, cool. So let me give you guys 10 minutes to get this stuff together, and then we'll pick it up from there.